Well, hello again everybody, my name's Chris and I'm going to be doing a short video review of the first camera lens I ever bought, Canon's 50mm f1.4 USM lens, and here we go, I'm going to attach it to a Canon 500D body where it actually makes a really good fit. Now, as you can see, I haven't quite sold this lens yet. I found it extremely useful and a lot of fun to use, and also it has some special properties that you just can't get with other kinds of lenses. This design is really quite old now. This lens dates back all the way to June 1993, but it's still quite special and it's used by professional photographers. Its younger brother is the Canon 50mm f1.8 lens, and that's actually considerably cheaper. However, this 1.4 lens lets in 67% more light than its cheaper brother, and it also has some other differences. So, how do they compare? Well, first, I'll take a look at this lens itself. This lens is at a fixed focal length of 50mm, and on most Canon digital SLR cameras there's a 1.6 times crop, meaning this lens behaves as 80mm. This is short telephoto focal length. It gives quite a zoomed in image. This means that getting a big group photo is extremely hard with this lens. You're going to be getting a lot of shots of individual subjects, whether you're filmmaking or just taking pictures. So why bother getting a lens like this when 50mm is a focal length covered by your zoomable kit lens? Well, as you can see from the amount of glass in front of this lens, something special is going on. It has a maximum aperture of f1.4, and that is huge. This lens lets in 16 times more light than your kit lens does at f5.6. This obviously makes low light photography very easy. Although this lens is not image stabilized, f1.4 allows a much faster shutter speed than the kit lens, meaning you can easily stop action and get rid of movement blurring with a fast shutter speed. For example, this picture taken in dark conditions during a game of badminton. f1.4 can also be useful when you're filmmaking, as you need a shutter speed of about 60 frames per second to be safe, and a lens that lets in lots of light allows you to do this. Good quality filmmaking at night is totally possible with this lens. The only big disadvantage to this lens is that, like I said, it's not image stabilized, so handheld filmmaking with it is going to be pretty shaky. Best to crack open that tripod which has been gathering dust in your attic. However, one big advantage to getting this 50mm f1.4 lens is that, when it's wide open, as you can see here, it delivers an extremely narrow depth of field, even more narrow than its 50mm f1.8 brother. This is the effect where the background and foreground of your image become very blurry and out of focus, but your subject remains sharp. The more you open the aperture on your lens, which gives you a lower f number, the more blurry your background looks, as you can see in this demonstration. Having a narrow depth of field makes your photography jump out and is the reason many people invest in a digital SLR, because having a larger image sensor also helps you to have a narrow depth of field. The Canon 50mm f1.4 opens up a very narrow depth of field for a reasonable price, which is exciting for new photographers, especially when you shoot close up. When the lens is set to f1.4, the background simply disappears, which makes this a fun and practical portrait lens. One more big advantage of this lens is that, if you do close the aperture down to f4 or so, the image quality becomes incredible. At f4, this lens has its sweet spot, and its image sharpness and lack of chromatic aberration is amazing. You can't get image quality like this with a kit lens under any conditions. If you want to take an important picture, and quality and image sharpness are crucial, then grab this lens, sell it to f4, f5.6 or even as low as f2.8, and you'll get an extremely high quality image. Here's a 100% crop of an 18 megapixel image taken with this lens at f5. However, in terms of quality, it's a very different story at f1.4, as you might expect. Take a look at the same crop at f1.4. Image quality is poor. There's chromatic aberration and softness, especially in the corners of the image. There's also strange purple fringing around bright light called halation. The pictures you take at f1.4 will be usable, but certainly not jaw-dropping in terms of resolution. However, I actually don't mind the image quality too much at f1.4. This lens's colours are rich and vibrant, which lends some real character to the fairly soft images at f1.4. I don't know, the quality isn't great, but the look is really nice. The lens has an 8-ring aperture blade, which delivers good background blur quality, or bokeh. f1.4 really throws everything but your subject out of focus, which is really nice. A few professionals do use this lens. I really love the images it gives. The lens is not cheap, but I think it's good value for the beautiful images it can produce. The focus ring is large, but not very smooth really. It travels a huge 200 degrees from close-up to infinity. Now this is really good for stills photography as it allows for very precise focusing, which is useful on a lens with such a narrow depth of field. However, it's a pain for filmmaking as you have to keep twisting and twisting the focus ring, which shakes the camera quite a lot. Ironically, the cheaper focus ring on a 50mm f1.8 is much more practical for filmmaking. Now the focus ring here has full-time manual focusing, which means you can tweak the focus even if the lens is set to autofocus, which is really nice and useful, and it means you're not going to accidentally damage the motor or anything if you're messing around with the focus ring while it's set to autofocus. The USM autofocus is quite fast and very quiet, as you can hear here. The lens has a nice metal mount, and although the body is plastic, it feels nice and weighty. Like most 50mm prime lenses, this lens does not focus closely to a subject, so macro photography is totally out of the question. Canon's kit lens is actually much better in this respect. I remember when I got my first digital SLR, a Canon 550D, and I bought this lens at exactly the same time. I never used the kit lens. I just had this on all the time and I took thousands of amazing looking pictures, and I learned so much from having a fixed focal length lens on my camera. The 50mm super narrow depth of field and beautiful colours make it an absolutely amazing beginning lens for any beginner photographer. It's also been really great for me to use this for low light indoor shooting and even nighttime outdoor shooting. It's really versatile because of its amazing light gathering capabilities. Like any 50mm lens, especially on a cropped body like this 500D, 60D, 7D, it gets a really intimate feel for your subject because it's zoomed in just the right amount just to pick out your subject. Now that I have my f2.8 zoom lens, I'm using this lens much less, especially as my f2.8 zoom has image stabilization. However, I still love the look of this lens's pictures, and it's been really useful for nighttime filmmaking and other applications when f1.4 was needed. For example, this high-speed video taken at Busan Aquarium high-speed slow motion. It's up to you whether to get this or save a little money by getting the 50mm f1.8, which I'll be making a review of pretty soon. If you don't use this lens very often, then you can save money with the f1.8 lens. Another alternative is the Sigma 30mm f1.4 lens. It lets in the same amount of light, but it's more wide angle, which will be much easier to use, especially for filmmaking, and also there's less camera shake evident, so it would be more useful to get the 30mm. If you're really into filmmaking, then this lens is great, but you should definitely consider the alternatives. The lens I recommend most to people is to get one of these. It's a fast standard zoom lens, f2.8 throughout its entire range. This particular one is Canon's 17 to 55mm f2.8 standard zoom lens. It's also image stabilized, and f2.8 lets in quite a lot of light, not the same as f1.4, but it does a very similar sort of job. And if you want to save a bit more money, Tamron also do a 17 to 50mm VC lens, which isn't quite as nice, but it costs much less. Something like this would be much easier for you to use, and also much more versatile. However, the kind of pictures you can get from this lens are just amazing and very just very unique. A lens like this can give your photography a very classy touch.